You keep looking at what has not happened yet, while God may be looking at who you became while it did not happen. Chosen one, it matters. You see unfinished parts. You see the door that still has not opened. You see the idea you keep postponing, even though you know it matters. And because the outside has not caught up with the inside, you assume the transformation is incomplete. But look more carefully. You do not chase people the way you once did. You recover from rejection differently. You notice manipulation earlier, and you no longer call every intense connection a divine assignment. You have become less impressed by noise. You can feel when something costs your peace, even when everyone around you calls it normal. You do not need every room to approve of you anymore. You do not explain yourself for hours just to keep someone comfortable. Something has changed, even if your circumstances still look familiar. That is the first thing I want you to see. God does not have to wait for your finish line before there is something worth honoring in you. A father can be proud when a child wins the race, but he can also be proud when that child becomes someone who no longer quits halfway through one. You keep measuring this season by what arrived. Maybe you should also measure it by what no longer controls you. Fear used to change your decisions quickly. Silence used to make you panic. Rejection could ruin an entire week. Now the same things may still hurt, but they do not own the center of you anymore. That is not a small shift. It is evidence of becoming. The person doing the waiting is not the same person who entered this season. Your standards have changed. Your attention has changed. Think about yourself 2 years ago. How quickly did you abandon your own needs to keep peace? How long did you remain where you were barely respected? How easily could one message, one opinion, or one cold response pull you away from what you knew was right? Now compare that person with you. You may still have work to do, but you have more discernment now, and you recognize patterns that once took months to understand. Most of that growth happens in private. This is where many chosen ones misread the season. They think nothing is happening because nothing dramatic is happening. But identity usually changes before circumstances do, and capacity often grows long before opportunity appears. The hidden work can be real, even when the visible reward has not arrived. So what exactly are you becoming capable of carrying? More peace without isolation, more responsibility without panic, more truth without needing everyone to agree. That question will matter more as we move forward. If you can recognize the difference between who you were and who you are becoming, write, "I am becoming" below. Not as a prediction, not as a performance. As an acknowledgement that something has already shifted, even if the next chapter has not fully shown itself yet. Because before we talk about what may be coming toward you, we need to understand why becoming often feels so strange. Sometimes growth does not feel like gaining. Sometimes it feels like losing people, losing habits, losing tolerance, and even losing the version of yourself that once knew how to survive everything. And that is where the next part begins. Why does becoming feel so much like loss if it is actually preparing you for more? There is a reason growth can feel like grief. You are not only receiving new understanding, you are also losing old ways of surviving. Some relationships feel different now. Some conversations feel exhausting. Some places that once felt exciting now feel strangely empty. You may have wondered if you became cold. Maybe you became more selective. You may have wondered if you became difficult. Maybe your standards finally became visible. Sometimes becoming means losing the need to belong everywhere. That can be painful. It can also be necessary. The old version of you learned how to stay connected at almost any cost, because rejection once felt more dangerous than self-abandonment. The person you are becoming is learning that peace cannot survive where you constantly betray yourself. Think about the moments nobody applauded, the invitation you declined because you knew the environment would pull you backward, the argument you refused to continue, the message you did not send, the night you wanted to return to an old pattern, but you stayed still until the urge passed. Those moments may look small from the outside. They are not small. They are where identity becomes visible through behavior, and behavior is often the first place inner transformation leaves evidence. This is why visible success is a poor scoreboard for spiritual growth. Joseph did not become capable of stewardship the moment he entered the palace. The capacity was being formed before the position arrived. He learned responsibility in places that did not look like promotion, and that matters because preparation often hides inside seasons we would never choose for ourselves. The same principle can apply to you. The season may feel quieter than expected, but if you react with more wisdom and abandon yourself less often, something important has already changed before any external reward confirms it. You are not becoming someone who never feels pain. You are becoming someone pain cannot command as easily. You are not becoming someone who never feels lonely. You are becoming someone who no longer confuses company with connection or attention with genuine care. That is why some doors closing can feel like loss and protection at the same time. The familiar part of you grieves what ended. The emerging part of you recognizes what continuing would cost. Both feelings can exist without meaning. You chose the wrong direction. If this sounds familiar, write "I see the change" below. Let it mark it. You are learning to notice the private decisions that reveal who you are becoming when nobody is watching. But there is another part of this season that can be harder to understand. If you are becoming wiser, why can your mind still feel scattered? If you are becoming more discerning, why do simple decisions sometimes exhaust you? Why can spiritual growth exist beside brain fog and overthinking? Do not answer that too quickly. The next layer matters because many sincere people misread mental overload as spiritual failure. They assume they need more discipline, more information, or more proof. But sometimes the real problem is not that you know too little. Sometimes you already know what matters. The problem is that what you know, what you feel, what you notice, and what you actually do are not moving together yet. That gap has a name, and once you see it, many parts of your recent struggle may finally make sense. There is a name for the space between knowing and living what you know. It is the integration gap. You can understand what needs to change and still repeat the same response. You can feel a clear conviction, then lose it inside competing thoughts before the day begins. You know better, so you expect yourself to do better immediately. But knowledge does not always become action on command, especially when attention, emotion, intuition, and decision-making pull in different directions. Think about the last decision you delayed. Maybe you already knew the answer. One part of you recognized the pattern. Another part feared the consequence. Another part wanted approval. Nothing was missing from the information, but the parts of you were not moving together. That is the integration gap. You know, you feel, you decide, you act. When those 4 stages line up, movement feels clean. When one keeps breaking away, even simple choices become exhausting because your mind reopens a question your deeper awareness already answered. This is why more information is not always the solution. You can watch another video, you can save another quote, you can fill another journal page, but if insight never survives long enough to become behavior, collecting more insight can become another form of delay. You may not need 100 new answers. You may need the answers you already have to start working together. Instead of asking, "What else must I learn?" ask, "What keeps interrupting what I already know?" Notice where your own sequence breaks. Do you know what matters but struggle to choose it? Do you feel the truth, then overthink until the signal becomes weak? Do you make a decision clearly, then abandon it when someone reacts badly? It is about seeing the pattern accurately. Once you locate the break, you stop treating every struggle as a lack of discipline. Sometimes the issue is not character. Sometimes your inner system is overloaded by too many signals at once. Now, imagine the opposite. You wake up, and the first hour does not disappear into mental noise. You hold one important thought long enough to act on it. You make a decision without asking 6 people to confirm what you already recognized. You start the project instead of organizing it forever. You send the message without rewriting it 20 times. This is not about becoming impulsive. It is about reducing the distance between discernment and responsible action. That kind of clarity changes how you carry your calling. A scattered mind can turn one instruction into 20 questions, while an integrated mind can notice what matters and give it enough attention to become movement. And this is where another question opens. Why can someone grow spiritually and still feel mentally foggy? Why can the heart feel ready while the mind feels tired? That question takes us deeper than motivation, because a receiver problem may be hiding inside what you called a faith problem. Before we go there, remember this. The gap does not prove failure. It shows you where integration still needs to happen. You do not have to shame yourself into clarity. You need to understand what keeps dividing your attention, your conviction, and your action. The next part will name the principle behind that division. It will explain why a signal can remain present even when the receiver struggles to process it. Once you understand that difference, the fog may stop feeling like evidence that you have been abandoned. You can grow spiritually and still struggle to hear what matters through the noise. That does not automatically mean the signal disappeared. Sometimes the receiver is simply overloaded. A clear message can exist while the system receiving it is tired, fragmented, and pulled in too many directions. Think about your phone in a crowded place. The message can still be there, but interference makes it harder to receive cleanly. Your inner life can feel similar. Stress, constant alerts, unfinished decisions, emotional tension, and endless input can crowd the space where discernment usually becomes clear. That is the receiver principle. The signal and the receiver are not the same thing. When your mind feels noisy, do not rush to conclude that God stopped speaking. Sometimes what changed is your ability to notice, hold, and act on what was already becoming clear. This matters because many sincere people turn mental overload into spiritual shame. They say, I must not be faithful enough. I must have lost my connection. I must need another message. But shame adds more noise to a system that is already carrying too much. Try 3 quiet questions instead. What do I already know? What noise keeps interrupting it? What action would become obvious if the noise disappeared? These questions do not force an answer. They help you separate the signal from everything competing with it. Maybe you already know a relationship is draining you. Maybe you already know which project deserves your attention. Maybe you already know your body needs rest, your schedule needs space, or your next step needs courage. The difficulty may be holding that knowing long enough to obey it. That is why clarity is not always about receiving more. Sometimes it is about protecting what has already been received. You protect attention. You reduce unnecessary input. You stop treating every opinion as guidance. You give one meaningful decision enough space to become stable. If this is speaking to you, write, I receive with clarity below. Not because every answer will arrive instantly. Write it as a decision to stop confusing noise with truth, and to stop measuring your spiritual connection by how loud your mind feels on a difficult day. There is another layer to this that becomes surprisingly practical. Researchers have spent decades studying how different parts of the brain specialize, communicate, and coordinate. That does not turn faith into neuroscience, and it does not reduce spiritual life to biology. But it does raise an interesting question. What if some of the clarity you have been trying to force spiritually also has a physical capacity component? What if an exhausted receiver can be supported, not by replacing prayer or discernment, but by understanding how attention and integration work? Hold that question. We will return to it later, because first you need to see why the person you were cannot carry the life you keep asking to enter. Growth is not only about removing what hurt you. At some point, growth becomes the ability to hold more without losing yourself. That is where the next threshold begins. The issue is no longer whether you are chosen. The issue becomes whether the person emerging can carry visibility, responsibility, opportunity, and truth without returning to the patterns that once kept everything small. The old version of you was built to survive what happened. That version learned how to read danger, avoid rejection, adapt quickly, and stay useful enough to remain accepted. Those skills may have protected you once, but survival skills can become limits when the next chapter requires something different. You cannot carry greater visibility while still needing everyone to approve of you. You cannot carry deeper love while abandoning your boundaries to keep it. You cannot carry more responsibility if every new demand pulls you into panic. The next life requires a different kind of stability. This is why some old habits are becoming unbearable now. What once felt normal suddenly feels expensive. The conversations feel empty. The chaos feels louder. The constant explaining feels exhausting. Your system is beginning to reject what your old identity once accepted as the price of belonging. Maybe that is not loss. Maybe it is preparation becoming visible. The person you were could survive confusion for years. The person you are becoming wants clarity. The person emerging wants to know which responsibilities are actually theirs. Imagine walking into a room that once intimidated you. You do not perform. You do not scan every face for approval. You listen. You notice what matters. When it is time to speak, you say what is true without making your worth depend on the reaction. Imagine receiving an opportunity without immediately fearing that you will ruin it. Imagine entering a healthy relationship without testing whether the other person will abandon you. Capacity changes what a blessing feels like after it arrives. Maybe the blessing is not only what enters your life. Maybe the blessing is becoming someone who can recognize what belongs there. That shift changes the entire meaning of this season. You stop asking only what is coming, and you begin noticing who is being formed to meet it. You have stayed with this message because you know this was never only about being chosen. Stewardship is different. Stewardship asks what you can carry without wasting, distorting, or destroying what was placed in your hands. That question can feel uncomfortable. You do not need to prove that you deserve a future. You can focus on becoming capable of meeting it with clarity, discernment, and enough inner space to respond rather than react. If you feel that shift, write, "I can carry more" below. Let it mean you are willing to grow beyond survival, not by becoming harder, by becoming more integrated, more responsible, and less available to patterns that once divided your attention. This leads to the threshold most people misunderstand. What happens when spiritual preparation finally meets mental capacity? What happens when you have healed enough to recognize the pattern, learned enough to know the lesson, and still feel one final gap between insight and execution? That gap is not asking you to start over. It may be asking you to become operational. There is a point where preparation cannot remain an idea inside you. It must become the ability to focus, decide, create, recognize patterns, and move without reopening every question you already answered. The next part is about that threshold. It may explain why you feel closer than ever and frustrated at the same time. You may not need another identity. You may need the capacity to live consistently from the one that has already been formed. You may have reached the point where more preparation is no longer the main answer. You changed, but the next chapter still asks something more. Preparation must eventually become capacity. Insight must become execution. Discernment must become decision. Healing must become a way of moving through real life without reopening every wound each time pressure appears. That is the stewardship threshold. It is the point where the question changes. You stop asking only, "When will it happen?" You start asking, "What capacity am I building for when it does?" A larger calling may require more than sincerity. It may require sustained focus when distractions multiply. It may require pattern recognition when information becomes complex. It may require emotional regulation when pressure rises. It may require clarity fast enough to act before fear rewrites the decision. You can be deeply prepared in spirit and still struggle operationally. That does not make your preparation false. It simply means the next stage asks your inner formation to become usable under pressure. Think about how many lessons you already know. You know which relationships drain you. You know which habits weaken you. You know what kind of work gives you energy. You know which fears keep returning. The problem is not always knowing. The problem is keeping all of that wisdom available when life becomes loud. This is why endless preparation can become another hiding place. You keep learning because learning feels safer than acting. You keep waiting for complete certainty because uncertainty gives fear somewhere to negotiate. But stewardship begins when what you know becomes stable enough to guide what you do. That does not mean rushing. It means becoming operational. You focus longer, you decide cleaner, you recover faster, you recognize a pattern before it becomes a crisis. You create without needing perfect conditions, and you stop treating every moment of discomfort as a sign to retreat. If this sounds like the season you are in, notice the difference. You are not being asked to become more worthy. You are being asked to become more capable of carrying what already matters. That is a very different assignment. And now we can return to the question I asked you to hold. What if some of the clarity you have been trying to force spiritually also has a physical capacity component? What if attention, integration, and the way different parts of the brain coordinate can influence how clearly you process what matters? This is where the receiver principle becomes practical. The signal may be present, the deeper work may already be happening, but if the receiver is constantly fragmented, even meaningful direction can dissolve before it becomes action. In the next part, we will look at the research that makes this question more interesting. We will also connect it to a practical tool designed around the idea of supporting mental integration, not as a replacement for God, not as a replacement for prayer, not as proof of spiritual worth. Before we go there, hold on to this. You were never being prepared merely to receive more. You were being prepared to waste less. Less attention, less time, less truth, less opportunity. That may be the real threshold in front of you now. The question is no longer whether you are chosen. The question is whether your mind, your habits, your attention, and your actions are becoming aligned enough to steward what being chosen requires. Now we can close the loop I asked you to hold earlier. I told you there was research that made the receiver question more interesting. I waited, because a solution only makes sense after you understand the problem it is trying to solve. You now understand that problem. In 1981, Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for discoveries about how the two cerebral hemispheres can specialize in different functions. His work did not prove any product. It did show that the brain is not one simple block doing everything in exactly the same way. Different systems contribute different strengths, and effective thinking depends on coordination. That matters here. If life demands creativity, judgment, attention, language, and emotional control, then integration affects how clearly you can use what you already know. The material behind a resource I am about to show you builds on that general idea. Its creators describe a method designed to support greater coordination across the brain. That is their claim, not a guarantee. According to the product material, one woman in California described years of sincere spiritual practice while still feeling mentally clouded. She reported that after using the audio consistently, her sense of clarity improved. That is one personal experience, not a promise about what will happen for you. Another testimonial comes from a man in Texas who described brain fog and decision fatigue. He said his thinking felt clearer after using the same method. Again, a testimonial can describe another personal experience, but it cannot predict your result. The resource is called the Genius Switch. It is a digital audio sequence designed to be used for about 8 minutes a day. The creators call the approach neural sync technology, and they describe its goal as supporting whole brain activation through greater coordination between the hemispheres. You use headphones. You close your eyes if it is safe. You relax and listen. There is no complicated routine to memorize, and the product material says you do not need a separate meditation practice while using it. This matters. The genius switch does not create your calling. It does not make you worthy. It does not replace prayer, discernment, rest, medical care, or responsible action. It is a practical resource built around the idea that the receiver can sometimes benefit from support. The creators present the mechanism as focused on coordination and integration rather than simply giving you another relaxation routine. Whether that distinction feels meaningful to you is something you should evaluate for yourself. This is not for everyone. It may be worth exploring if you have already done deep inner work, yet still feel a gap between what you know and what you can consistently execute. Being interested does not obligate you to buy anything. Read the details. Look at the claims carefully. Decide whether the mechanism makes sense to you. A useful tool should survive your questions, not require you to silence them. According to the product material, the listed price is $49, while the page presents an offer of $39. Prices can change, so treat the vendor page as the source for the current amount. The purchase is digital, with no physical shipping. The package also includes a guided visualization, a grocery guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. Those bonuses may add value, but the core reason to consider the offer should still be the audio itself. The product page states that the purchase includes lifetime, digital access, and a money-back guarantee. Read the exact terms before deciding. Risk reversal can reduce uncertainty, but it should never replace your judgment. If this connects with the receiver principle we have been building, the resource is in the description and pinned comment. Look at it with a clear mind. You do not need pressure or fear. You only need enough information to decide whether it fits your next season. And whether your answer is yes or no, remember this. A tool can support the receiver, but it can never become the source. A tool can support the receiver, but it can never become the source. That distinction protects everything we have been building. Your worth does not come from an audio track. Your calling does not come from a product. Your relationship with God cannot be purchased or unlocked by a checkout page. If the genius switch is useful for you, let it remain what it is. A practical support for clarity, nothing more. It does not create obedience. It does not create discernment. It does not make you chosen. Some of you may be thinking, I have tried things before. That is reasonable. Skepticism after disappointment is understandable. That is why I do not want you buying from emotion alone. Read the page. Understand what is being claimed. Use the guarantee as protection, not as permission to stop thinking. If the mechanism makes sense, consider it calmly. Others may be thinking, I do not need another spiritual product. Good. You do not need one. This is not a requirement for faith. It is a practical resource that may support mental clarity for people who feel their receiver has become overloaded. And some may think, maybe I should just pray harder. Prayer matters. But practical support and prayer do not automatically compete. Sleep does not replace faith. A calendar does not replace discernment. Taking care of your attention does not insult your spiritual life. The same principle applies here. If a tool helps you become more present or focused, you can evaluate that benefit without turning the tool into an authority over your life. If you want to examine the genius switch, the resource remains in the description and pinned comment. That is the last time I need to bring it forward. The decision belongs to you, because now we return to something no product can give you. No audio can choose courage for you. No technique can hold a boundary for you. No purchase can make the difficult call, tell the truth, leave the wrong room, or remain steady when old patterns ask you to return. That part is yours. Support can help the receiver, but stewardship is still lived through your choices. The person you are becoming matters more than the tool you use along the way. Before this message ends, there is one final thing I want you to hear. You have spent enough time asking whether you are becoming acceptable. The deeper question is whether you are willing to live as the person your healing has already begun to create. The closing is not about buying anything. It is about recognizing what cannot be bought. Your next chapter needs your presence, your truth, your attention, and your willingness to stop returning to the identity that survived when a different identity is ready to lead. Before we end, I want you to do something simple. If you are somewhere safe, let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. Just become quiet enough to notice who you have been and who you are becoming. Picture the version of you who survived the old season. See how much that person carried. That version got you here. But survival is not leadership. The person who learned how to endure everything may not be the person who should choose everything next. Now picture the version of you that is emerging, clearer, less desperate to be understood, more willing to leave what drains your peace. If it feels natural, place a hand over your chest. Take one slow breath. Tell yourself, I do not need to return to who survived. You can carry the wisdom forward without carrying every defense that came with it. At the beginning, I asked what you are becoming capable of carrying. Now you can answer that question. You are becoming capable of clarity without arrogance, responsibility without panic, discernment without suspicion, peace without isolation, love without begging. That is stewardship. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like finishing one task before opening another. Sometimes it looks like resting before exhaustion turns clarity into confusion. Be grateful for what changed quietly. Be grateful for the boundary nobody celebrated. Be grateful for the night you did not go back. Now, release what you no longer need. Release the need to prove your worth. Release the need to rush the timing. Release the belief that every delay means rejection. You are not becoming worthy. You are becoming ready. You are not becoming someone God can finally love. You are becoming someone more capable of carrying what love requires. More clarity, more responsibility, more discernment, more courage, and more truth. The outside may still be catching up. That does not erase what happened inside you. The door may still be closed today. That does not mean the person standing before it is the same person who first arrived there. Maybe this season was never only about getting what you asked for. Maybe it was about becoming someone who could receive more without losing peace, hold more without losing truth, and move forward without returning to survival. If that is what you recognize in yourself, right, I am ready to steward below, not as a performance. Let it be a declaration that you are willing to live from the clarity already forming within you. You do not need to chase the old version of yourself. You are becoming exactly who this next chapter requires. Not because every question is answered, not because every fear disappeared, but because you are learning how to carry truth without dropping yourself in the process. Let the noise settle. Keep what is true. Release what is not yours. Walk forward with attention, humility, and courage. And if this season has changed you in those ways, perhaps the deepest evidence was never that God abandoned the process. Perhaps the evidence is the person standing here now. Amen.